wanted to come on live and talk about life. I think it's more than life. I have this program called Zoom, and wanted to try to get other people to call in and participate in the call. I don't necessarily know how Facebook works, but it's so important to understand what's happening in the public education system today. Many people don't even understand public education. What is it? We have to ask ourselves, what is it when we are required to attend a public school system by law? Because education is compensatory. And so when you start understanding what compensatory education is, it's simply mandated by the federal government. You get this by, all states get additional money and we all pay taxes. And some people say, oh, no, it's just property taxes. No, baby, it's reality. The federal government counts the census, and here we are. The census is going on right now, or getting ready to go on. And the count is real. They count everything when you live in a community, and then that's how they determine the federal dollars that are coming back to your community. And so when we look at public education, what we need to understand is simply what's happened over time. And over time, Black seems to be on the bottom of the barrel. I remember, California used to be the best in the nation in public ed. And we used to have some of the top schools, but now it's just not that anymore. And so I heard a young man, he was younger than I was. Anyways, he was pretty upset about Dr. Umar Johnson. And he may be out there trying to engage the public, but the reality is that we as a people don't want to hear the truth about what's happening to our people. Why is it our children know nothing about accessing resources in the public education? And why is it okay to get a letter grade of F? I have to ask myself the question every day. Why would you accept failure as an option for the whole year? Why would you just take the letter grade of F? I'm still confused as to why that even happens. And it happens all the time. It happens because, it's something that we accept as a people. So across this nation, African American people are far, far below basic and failing to thrive in a public school system. And we do absolutely nothing about it. We don't have a way to actually engage in the conversation. Although I think that we engage independently. I mean, you advocate for your children. You do what you can to ensure that your children have access, and you do the best you can. And it's only going to be you that's going to be the responsible party to ensure that your child has access in the first place. But if you don't know what you have a right to, then it's something that you just don't get. Because there are people that just accept the letter grade of F. I don't know how you do that. But for year after year, I think in the first couple of years, when a child's new to the education system and kindergarten happens, and they should know where their name goes on the paper. They should know how to write their name. They should know how to tell time. They should know some basic things, how to use some scissors. It doesn't seem like it's a whole lot, but guess what? There are far too many people who are not participating in ensuring that their children have access. And so what we have is a nation of people who really never get basic skills. And so they're not educated and they're not accessing our system. They're dependent on the system. And so when it comes down to system dependence, you give a man a fish every day, he'll come back for the same fish. You teach a man to fish, he'll fish for a lifetime. Our people are not fishing for a lifetime because they really are not accessing general resources. And so many Black people don't vote. You talk to a Black person, oh, girl, I don't do no public policy. What is public policy? Public policy is your tax dollars that work for you, because you're going to pay taxes. In your lifetime, you're going to pay some taxes. And if you're not paying taxes, someone's going to be providing services for you so that the system can be sustained or the system can survive. We live on a system of, we live in a democracy. What is democracy? Well, it thrives under a republic. What is a republic? Well, a republic acts as, like the quilt. It sews all of our states together. And the democracy is the people. And under this democracy, we're all supposed to share our concerns about services that come back to us so that we can ensure that we're all benefiting. Well, it just so happens that blacks were slaves and blacks got into the public game late. And there's, even though there were services that were carved out for our people, the reality is that even though there were services that were carved out for black people, the reality is that those same services were inaccessible because someone wanted to give you the services to ensure that their community could be sustained. And so we're all in the struggle for resources. How do we ensure that resources are allocated properly if you never step up and you're never heard and no one ever understands the consequences of inaction is failure? I don't know what to say. This is 2020, and people are concerned about what people say about what happens in the public school system, about what's happening to our people, and why our people have so many behavioral issues. Why is tolerance an issue in the public school system when you're supposed to be going there to learn? And how are people supposed to be ensuring that you have access to general curriculum? I don't understand. When they can just give you a letter grade of F. Oh, he got an F. He didn't try. Oh, I don't know. No help. But guess what? They get a paycheck every day. And that paycheck is real because we're paying people health care and benefits, all to ensure that people can be sustained in our local communities. Localism, local control really is local. It just means, are you counting yourself in the local people? Do you include yourself in the advocacy for people who look like you? And where's your voice? Where is Team ADOS? African Americans, descendants of slaves. Is that it? I think that's it. Doesn't really matter. I was born in America, and as an American citizen, have a personal responsibility to engage in the public services that sustain the community because I'm here. If I wasn't here, it'd be different, but I am here. And the questions I concern myself with is, they're looking at the weighted formula here in Nevada. Every child will generate a specific dollar, but the dollars are aligned to be pretty much equal. And then when you look at Title I and neglected and delinquent and special education and gifted and talented and all the other little pots, English language learners, all the little pots of federal dollars that come in, because, the federal government is just, that's not big money at all. But it is allocations of individuals who provide those services. And all of the schools get a same number of resources, allocation people. Now, but when you start talking about the people and the number of years of service and how well they do their job and who's benefiting, then you have to look at where those schools are located. Well, some of those schools are 100% Title I. Some of the schools even may be magnet schools. But the magnet schools are based on location in the poor neighborhoods. Magnet schools to encourage integration. That was during the mandatory desegregation acts of the 60s or whatever. And so now we have integrated schools, but even though the integration happened, the maintenance, it's called maintenance of effort. What actually happened around Brown versus the Board of Education and the inclusion of African Americans in the public school? So they had, so they can so kind of like have access to the same resources as all other children. It kind of like doesn't work because it's broken. Because people who know that they can access certain resources, well, they access them. And then people who have no ability to access those resources, well, they don't even know those resources exist. So if they're going to school every day and getting in trouble because they're not engaged in the process of learning, it's a real thing for them. And I don't know how long. I mean, we have to understand what we're doing to people in society. When you have 8-year-olds that would attempt to commit suicide, that's some insane stuff that's going on. That a child would be expected to go to school every day and get a letter grade of F. Can someone help me with that? I'm trying to understand because, they really do promote the children without meeting adequate yearly progress or reaching grade level proficiency. It's called, grade level proficiency. And understand that every child, even if they have a disability, have a right to reach the same grade level standards as any other non-disabled child. So if you have a disabled child, you have a right to make progress with that child, measurable progress, something that even if it's a little thing, you should be able to measure the benefit of effort that the team created to ensure that your child had an opportunity to learn and a place to learn, and that it's beneficial to you. That's what public school's all about. But we're moving in a nation where they're creating private spaces for people who perhaps don't pay as much taxes as you do. Simply because, we're living in a nation where taxation without representation is a real thing. So when we're looking at people who look like us, understanding that they just simply have little or nothing, it's a reality. They do have little or nothing. And, I can get on this little box and know that I'm living in my little idiot box. Everybody lives in a box. And public education is a mandatory thing. It's called compulsory education. And so, but when they try to figure out ways to hold themselves harmless, there's hold harmless clauses in the federal education allocations of how the dollars are allocated and the intended use of those dollars. And if they don't kind of meet the basic standards, they don't want to be punished for that. Well, hell, no one does. No one wants to be. Nipsey Hussle got a song out. No one wants to miss out on any part of life. But here, yet and still, we have people who don't have the ability to access certain parts of life because they never have an opportunity to access basic skills. You have to have a skill to be successful. And when you have skills, believe me, there are many things you can do. There are many people who are my age who don't know how to do what I do, how to do. And that's why I'm sitting here right now. I see other women who are very self-empowered and they're stepping up their game because they understand now it's for us to take the personal responsibility to address issues that concern us. Issues that concern women are equal rights. Issues that concern women are ensuring that if we have children, they have access to the world. There are so many issues that concern us as human beings. We want to have somewhere to feel safe. We want to have somewhere to eat. We want to ensure that we have good, nutritious food going in our bodies, and we want to make sure that we can afford to have that food. There are just so many issues that we could all talk about. Yet and still, we talk about the backyard party guy. Backyard cart. R. Kelly is the man. He can explain life. And that Not many people can. That's what I would say. Because he has it like that. Just like Snoop. Snoop got it like that. He's living his best life. He ain't got time to deal with you. Some of these rappers, they are saying just what it's all about. And I'm saying it's real life. And a lot of people, oh, I don't like rap. Get real. The kids like it because it's talking about how they feel and how they don't have access either. How is it that we're forced to participate in a system in which our parents, if they don't show up, we don't got no benefit to? How do you get an F every day? How do you go to a classroom and what do you expect it to do when you don't understand what you're told to do? And then next year, they just move you on up to the next grade and move you on up to, there are kids in high school that have less than 50 credits in the 12th grade. And the Black community is not saying a whole lot of nothing. Oh, those parents need to do something with they chilling, because that's they chilling, right? No, there are children that are going to be out there and dealing with us as a people. And we all have to have a place to live. And we like to go to the grocery store and we like to have money in our pocket. But guess what? There are people out there that have no access to money. And they just as soon take yours as to go out there and work for it. Because really, they ain't got no skills. And there's no pathway set out for people who have less or no skills. So I think, as a society, as we're paying all those monies for those taxes, then we think about what are we actually getting? I don't know. What are we getting as Americans? As African Americans, or Americans of African descent, or Black Americans, or those colored folks, or those niggas, what are we getting if we have to accept the failed public services and have no way to access a conversation about what's happening with the real failure? Why are our children having the inability to access that public resource? And if it is not working for them, how come we can't talk about ways that we can ensure that we can engage those children? When will it happen? I don't know. My voice is just as important as any other voice. And when we allow the nation to take and disregard our personal freedoms, our personal rights, our Fourth Amendment rights, our First Amendment rights, all of those rights, do you think we're going to get them back if we just allow them to not adhere to the law? There are laws that are really being violated. When you deny a child access to a basic resource, and then you don't have any data that anything you did, nothing you did, however, whatever you chose to do, nothing was targeting to support those children. I mean, I think that people know my sister is a kindergarten teacher. Well, she's a substitute teacher. And so she gets to work with a lot of different ages. And my son was in the spectrum, autistic, and he came a long way because he came from far, far below basic to above proficient with a one-on-one aid and a laptop. And he graduated with a high school diploma, and he passed the Casey. He passed the ninth grade proficiency, algebra proficiency. He passed the high school, the high school exit exam. And then, he took the assessments, whatever, the SAT and the ACT. But then when we went over to, but he took them and he didn't get the accommodations. And so whatever happened, the school messed up that day and we didn't really get those test results. But guess what? When I took him over to Sac City College, they assessed him and they said he doesn't need any more English. He's done with the college level the 2-year writing requirement. And he loves to read. And he reads every day. And when they say reading is fundamental, reading is fundamental. How will you ever know what's going on around you? if you don't research and do the comparative analysis to ensure that you understand what's going on around you. It's so important that you understand that we all live in this system called America, and that we are all American citizens, but you are not a citizen if you fail to exercise that functional right to understand that even if you're working and you got a job, that it's your responsibility to know what's going on with the public school system, because one day you might have a child, or you might have a grandkid, or you might marry someone with a child. But it really doesn't matter, because the people out there that don't have any education will certainly affect you in some kind of way one day, because you just never know when it's going to happen. We have to be more responsible as American citizens to ensure that we're paying attention to the public services and that they're actually functional and that it works for all of us. Because if it doesn't work for all of us, it's not working for any of us. How do we just keep on, it's kind of like, that little commercial. What do we do now? Just keep eating. Pretend it's not happening. We can't pretend it's not happening anymore. It's a horrible thing. It's not a joke. It's not a joke to see people out there living on the streets and understand that people are lobbying because they don't want them in their area. They don't want them in their neighborhood. Don't be camping outside my house. It's not my problem. But guess what? At one time, they were paying taxes, or guess what? Know this, there's somebody getting paid to provide services to those people. How functional are those services? Is it working? I can't say it's working. I have, this is the best tool or whatever since Ice-T, as far as I'm concerned. I am so blessed to understand the power of the shift of the narrative and understand that it is our prerogative to exercise our personal responsibility, then ensure that we're having a conversation about the most important thing in the world, about how people who are only required to have an 8th grade diploma can take your child's life because they feel threatened. They don't have to have any higher educational requirement than a high school diploma or whatever. I say high school diploma because, and I said 8th grade, and I mean it, because California used to require that students take the assessment and reach 8th grade level, high school exit exam, i.e. the KC. And then all of a sudden, California got rid of the KC and released their responsibility to the high school exit exam. So all of a sudden, they don't have to do it anymore. I'll just say that. And so since they're not doing it, who's doing it? Nobody. And then they said, okay, well, we're just going to get some certificates of completion. Got that? What does that mean? What is a certificate of completion? Well, it doesn't get you federal financial aid, I don't believe. It's like the little piece of paper that you get when you're in special ed. But guess what? My son did not get it. He got a high school diploma. And like I said, he don't need no more English because he's mastered the King's English. And we all need to master the King's English. And we can't be tearing down individuals who are willing to get out here and try to share with people who don't understand the impact of the failed services. Because we all need to understand there is an impact when you do not pay attention locally, what's happening to children. And the children are being required to go every day. And if they don't, their mama could go to jail. That's real. You can be punished if you don't put your child in the public school system. And so there are consequences to families. And there's all these people working in the social service area. And they have jobs. And those jobs are being paid through your tax dollars. But if they're not functional, I don't know what. I mean, we are a prison nation. So, when Microsoft was running around saying, Bing, bing, bing. Human capital. They meant you. Because you don't own this technology. And it used to have hard drives that will be on your system, but now everything's in the cloud and it's tracking you and it knows exactly what you do. And it gives you permissions or it takes permissions away. But it really doesn't matter because you ain't supposed to know it's doing it. So, socials, the methods is real. You can only talk about that so much. We just need to do better by ourselves. Understand that if we choose not to stand up, then understand that others will take advantage and make a decision on your behalf. And that's just real. That's so real. Life is real. Life is full of choices. And when people make choices, those consequences are real. You have to live by those choices. And so, I used to listen to Travis Parker. He's coach over there at Cosumnes River College. And he said, life is like this. The ABCs. You're on the train. You start at A. You be going along and everything is cool. Then all of a sudden around C or D, something kicked you off the train. Well, you either have to wait to get back on the train or you never get back on the train. And that's a real thing. But if you get back on, you can still continue to thrive and still continue to build life until you get all the way to the end. But then it always just is just like what the pastors say. They was down there on Skid Row and they seen so-and-so and so-and-so, whatever, when they was down there. And they remembered them. But then when they came back and went back through there, so-and-so was still in the same place. It's like a little book that me and my sister read. Who moved the cheese or who stole the cheese or whatever. But the cheese moved. And so there were certain people that just wanted to come back and they kept on wanting to make that cheese be there. And I think that's where we are as a people. We go to the public school system and we want to make it do what it's supposed to do by just turning our children over. And it was Malcolm X that said you're going to turn your children over to your enemy and expect your enemy to do something good for your son or your child. That's why, it's important that you participate in your child's education. You need to know what it is. What is education? I will tell you, education is simply a modification of basic behavior. So if you accepted the modified behavior thing and every time you go to the school you're getting some behavior updates, well, hey, that's what you chose to accept. It's kind of like, you're not pushing for them to do the real work. You have a right to have the same access and the same access to the same resources as the best, the gifted and gate student over there. But even if you can't access it, you have a right to attempt to measure the benefit of what those services will bring for you and, and how well. Because when it really comes down to it, in the end, you just want to have a certain level of skill so you can access society. But why should someone have the right to just come and say, you didn't get it every day? And how could you get it? How could you actually access the level of services that you need to if for some reason you got kicked off the boat a long time ago? So I want to say in the third grade, you never got past third grade reading level. They promoted you to fourth grade. And then you were trying to do the work, but you really never got past the fifth grade. And then all of a sudden, by the sixth grade, you're not getting really good grades. You're getting letter grades of Fs. And you don't know what to do. And it's stressful to you. So if you don't find a way to go to the library as a child, baby, or your parents not providing those extra opportunities for you to have access to the additional resources, well, it ain't going to change for you. You have to push yourself. You have to be disciplined. You have to understand that we have to be better than any other person. We have to be the best of the best. We have to know who we are, and we have to read the rules, and we have to abide by the rules so we don't get caught up. That's what it means. You don't want to get caught up? Read the rules. Everybody has to live by the rules. The rules are real. So, when you're trying to bring attention to the rules and the process, and it's not working for you, then it's time to do something different. I'm doing something different tonight. I'm out here talking, and I'm just really talking to myself. I don't know how to add people to the room. I invite people, but nobody kind of checked in. I got an event log, and I know it got a lot of errors, and uh, and there are just a lot of errors, and uh, and it's funny because all of my mechanical devices have errors, but they've had errors for a while. The game is, can you keep your shit on? Excuse my French. Didn't even say that little word. Can you keep your stuff together, up and online, and manage to continue to access and do what it is you do? Because you know, I'm, I remember my son when we get that book, The Secret. Well, the secret is you need to know who you are. That's the secret. And then once you know who you are, understand that the journey has already been created for you to empower specifically you, because your choices were specifically geared to who you were. And then understand the secret is the empowerment of understanding your journey. And we have had journeys. I've had a great journey. This white hair means a lot. And I can put a wig on and look a little bit younger, but I'm real. 60 is real. Blessed to be here. Grateful to be here. Knowing that what I've learned to this point, no one else knows. Only me, because it's been my journey. And I can't share with you unless you're willing to listen. And that's why Dick Gregory, I think he used to get on this box all the time and talk about what he knows to be true. And we would hope to reach and engage you as a person to help broaden your mind. And that we don't have to have people belittling other people. And I don't know, there's a lot of controversy in the world today. But every black person that made a little name for himself, that's getting a little paycheck, that's getting a little bit of money, has another black person trying to tear him down. Because I don't know who could do it better. Because they don't have to do it for us. Because they're running it. They're running the game. They get to make the decisions about what happens locally for public school children, not you. There are there are programs that you could perhaps access. They don't have to let you in. And then in the programs that you're in, they don't have to help you to do better for yourself. You could just be allowed to get an F. You could go to school all year long and still get the letter grade of F. So, and there's nothing that you can do about it. What can you do about it? As a parent, it's very little that you can do about it unless you understand the rules. That's why I said the rules mean everything. So under special education, people act like the yellow bus is an issue. The yellow bus is not an issue, and really it's just a safety measure. So children with disabilities can get to and from school in a safe manner. And so that's the yellow bus. And guess who pays for all of that? Federal government pays for that. And they're going to give, and even if they don't fully fund it, they're going to give you some money on it. And then, okay, so let's look at special again. So when you have a child that has a disability, and should we just call it an ability? They have the ability to do many things, but not like all children. So let's look at how we assess our children to determine their needs. So you have a right to have an evaluation done by the public school system in the public school when your child's not meeting basic level standards. So you have the child assessed and you allow the district to do the assessment. You write the letter to the principal or to the Department of Education or whoever is your person that oversees your local district. And then you have your child assessed, and then you wait for that assessment to come back and you have a meeting. Who's in the meeting? There are a lot of people in the meeting. The people who did the work, the assessments, the principal, someone from special ed. You know, there's a whole list of people that are required to be in the house by the federal government. Has a whole requirement of the process and what it should look like. And so, you know, it really is a strategic thing that we're talking about how children learn. And so when you're meeting with all of these wonderful people who really come to meet with you to have a talk about what and how we can support your child, because that's what the conversation is about. And it's a wonderful conversation, because when it really gets to the point where you understand that you're self-empowered in this group to talk about the benefits of public education and how you can measure how your child is accessing it, then you understand the power of knowledge and understand that you have the right to access that knowledge, and so does your child. So here we are playing in the game, understanding the methodology behind learning, and know that no, you just don't get it by having to enroll in the public school. You're just another resource. It's almost like, the harvest. It is the harvest. And we were the crop during the slave days. We harvested the crop. We built this country. We are the foundation of this country. We built the White House. Even though people have a problem with the first Black president living in it, because that was real. We had the 8 years of Obama, 8 years of the negative, you know what I'm saying? Continual, every day, talking about Barack Obama, Barack Hussein Obama, who's not an American. We have the president, the current one right now, who didn't want to admit that Barack was a white woman's son, and he was raised by white parents, not black parents. It was unfortunate, kind of like rolled off on him, just like how Black men don't raise their children in America. I won't say all Black men, because there are some Black men that are out there and doing the damn thing, loving their children. So it was important for me to teach my children not to have children until they could be there and love them unconditionally, because that's what love is about, unconditional. You need to be down for your children, because that's your tribe. And so my mother understands that. That's what she taught us. So we do have a tribe. All of the children in our family have graduated from high school. Know that. We don't have anybody sitting in jail. Know that. Know that I love who I am. And I don't need anybody else to tell me what I need to do. I'm doing what I need to do because I know I've lived this. I supported my sons. They graduated from public schools. There are many, many children out there who don't graduate. And what are we talking about? Umar Johnson he is a school psychiatrist. He's an outside assessor. He's who we get when we need to talk about what services we need to ensure that our children access public services. That's real life. And I had lots of outside evaluations, and the district paid for all of them. And they may have been done by Dr. Umar Johnson, but they were done by outside professionals. And guess what? It created access to ensure that my child made progress. And I do mean progress, and I mean adequate yearly progress. And I mean, he graduated and he did the work just like all of the other children that were up there doing the work. But know this, we have far too many children in the public school system who have no homework. They ain't got no homework. They don't have any homework. They go to school every day and they don't have no homework. What in the hell is going on? Ask yourself. What job is that they're doing in school that they ain't got nothing to do when they come home except for watch the idiot box? Television. Because it's television, telling you how to live. It's okay to take a break. I take a break. I watch some TV. Everybody needs to have a break from this what we call life. But if we get into a war situation, I don't know how we do that, because the black folks ain't gonna be shipping off to war because they all in the penitentiary, and that's real. California was putting so many black folks in juvenile that they were shipping them off to other states. There's been incidents of people selling contracts of African American, children I won't say just targeted blacks. I'm saying everybody's in the pot right now. And then we have folks who are just going into public schools and public places and shooting up. We have American people who are doing that. I'm trying to understand the value of American people and the value of American citizenship, and what do we really believe? If we can't say the Pledge of Allegiance, and I did that for many, many years. And Star Spangled Banner, Star Spangled Banner, all that, standing to allegiance and all that. Then to have to see day after day after day of a young African American person being shot down without the right to have a trial by their peers. Concerning. I'm concerned every day. And so this is my way of chilling out. Because I used to love to go to the school board meetings and listen to everybody say whatever they had to say. And then I would go home and research it and see what they said, to see what they meant by what was going on. Because, we are talking about we the people. And because I've had lots of opportunity participating with we the people, it's been a great life. I've served on lots of boards, SETA, and the SETA Head Start Board, and the School Site Council. I served on the District Advisory Committee for Title I Compensatory Services for Sac City Unified School District for more than 5 or 7 years with Lori, and so many people I had an opportunity to enjoy, my journey with and learn with them. And then I was on the case, the Special Education Committee case, and then I was on the Alliance for Family and Community Partnerships with Maria Elena and Maxine Pepper with CASE. We've done so much work and still struggle to have a voice in just what's happening, because for some reason the entitled people are really pushing for the entitlement of the small charter schools. Charter schools, there's nothing wrong with charter schools. I am all down for charter schools, because when Margaret Fortune wanted to get those charter schools and she was trying to go through the districts, I told her, hey, that's not something going to happen. They're not going to do that. I said, but the county has to look at how services are being provided to all children. And the county has responsibility to ensure that those services are equitably shared. It's a county responsibility, because the states have given the responsibility over to their local county. And the county gives over the services to the local school districts. And the local school districts are supposed to be equitably sharing those resources. And you should be able to measure the benefit of those resources across the spectrum of all the different races. But for some reason, Black folks can't access the resources. And somebody needs to help me with that. I'm trying to understand why it is that we're not talking about the inability for African Americans to access basic educational services. We were almost guaranteed that under the 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendment, except for in the commission of a crime now, you become a criminal. Well, hot damn, guess what I found out? I found out that even if you're in special ed, they don't have to have a manifestation hearing. They can work with the SRO officer at the public school system and just arrest your child, and they don't have to even account for you, even though you've been there for 12 years. They don't have to account for you being expelled, because they didn't have to go through that process, because you got arrested for a proposed, somebody said that they felt threatened. Everybody has a different interpretation, especially when people have language disabilities. Now you have and guess what? When the child that got arrested was special ed, all of a sudden, none of his disabilities mattered anymore, because guess what? He's a member in the juvenile hall now. He has no rights, nothing that they have to look at, because he's now was in the commission of a crime. Pimping ain't easy, but goddamn, somebody has mastered this. So it is our children somehow who could not really access the resources in the first place, but now they're just remanded over to the juvenile halls through a contract, no less. I didn't see the board, I didn't see no public conversation about what happened and how that ever happened. It's just happening now because somehow they don't have to address your IEP. They don't ever have to address your IEP. Hell, you don't have to make progress. You could just be in special ed and be in special ed. And none of the differentiated services have to benefit you. You can just keep on getting the letter grade of F. Now, how does that work? You're in special ed and you get an F and nobody does anything about it. And the next year you get Fs and nobody does anything about it, but you're still getting special ed. You're getting special services. They're spending a lots of money on your public service. But guess what? You ain't getting no benefit, but somebody's getting a benefit. Now, I see the benefit happening all the time. You see those people going to Europe and Spain and Greece and Italy. And I was over there and I know the teachers go over there. And it's not a teacher thing because it could be an administrative thing. But there are people that work in the public education system and they love to travel. And guess what? They have the time to travel. It's called pimping. They have 3 months of the summer off. And then Christmas and holidays, they get all that off and they get health care. Now think about this. They get all of that and they ain't got to serve up nothing. So we can still have homeless folks on the street. People don't need to have a maintenance of effort. They just need to do better for themselves. Hell, the people who are deciding the rules for you, they're doing better for themselves. Now you figure out how the hell you're going to do it for yourself because that's really what we're talking about. Pull up your own self by your own bootstraps. And it's okay if we charge you. Look, whoever our service provider is, somehow, someone got a little pissed off at me. And then we started having these warnings on our bill about we were downloading movies. I don't have time to download movies, especially movies that I don't watch. So apparently there were some warnings put on the bill. And then a threat was made that they were going to block the devices or suspend our account. Now we pay almost $300 for internet services. And we pay that every month. And they're going to suspend. And I was wondering what they were going to do. All of a sudden, my laptop could not get online. Now, it took me a minute to figure it out. I could not access my laptop online. But I could tether my laptop to my cell phone and get online. That's when I realized that my service provider had blocked my laptop and perhaps didn't like my advocacy because I did file a complaint here in the state of Nevada in regards to the 256% or perhaps 259% of behavioral infractions for African Americans, higher than any other ethnic group in the world. Black children somehow just don't know how to behave. And I don't know what this behavior thing is, but according to this other guy that I caught a part of his video, he was really kind of offended that Dr. Umar Johnson was talking about how he felt that our children need to be more disciplined and need to understand the circumstances they've been placed under and understand this is not a game. If you don't get a basic education, you ain't got nothing. If you don't have a basic skill, you ain't got nothing. You can go to school for 12 years and come out and they can give you letter grades of A's and B's on a Z-coded curriculum. Anybody know what Z-code means? To Z-code the curriculum means that they lower the curriculum to a standard in which that you can access it. So even if you can't access it, the curriculum for your age-appropriate level, they've lowered it so you can access it. So now you're doing third grade work in the 12th grade, and you're still getting a grade. And guess what you're getting a grade on? Behavior. You were good that day. You didn't offend anybody. Or you were nice and quiet. You seemed to be mannered, well-mannered. You got good grades. So you can have a 4.0, but then you can take that SAT assessment or the ATC assessment, and then you can score high on it. But that doesn't really mean nothing, because I know that Alan Rowe had gotten a student into Texas Southern, and he had a 1.98, or a low GPA, and his brother had gotten killed, and circumstances had changed in his life, and he turned himself around, and he started working. He became the president, and then he testified in Congress about his death of his brother. I mean, he became a mover and a shaker, and that's what we need in life. We need people that have experienced life, who understand the consequences of inaction and choose to take action, and this kind of action, because it's time for us all to wake up. We all need to wake up. There is nothing in life but to do it. You wake up in life and you just need to live. And that's what we need to do. We need to understand that in living that there are inherent risks every day. But if we choose not to stand up, there's an inherent risk in that too. Is that we're choosing to lose our civil rights, and through the inaction of civil engagement. We have a personal responsibility to stand up and have our voices be heard. And if you're truly happy with the public education system, don't watch my videos. What can I say? I'm truly unhappy about the public education system and the inability to be effective in sharing the concern about the failed services. Why should people have the right to have a free paycheck and then not be held accountable for the outcomes? How is it that we have so much federal dollars going into public education, and then we have no accountability for the access for all children? Where is the due process rights for African American children? And how is it that we can just accept failure? Because guess what? This is a lifetime failure, and people are in and out of incarceration over time, for a long period of time, just because they don't have basic skills. It takes a lifetime to get yourself together to where you can push forward and be independent and learn how to survive on your own. But somebody got a paycheck on your back. And it would be easier if people would just get off of your back and understand that we have a personal responsibility to ensure that all people have access to basic skills, understanding how the system impacts us if we're choosing to ignore that it's us. We're the one that's not calling for accountability. How is it that, I lived in Sacramento almost my whole life. I graduated from Kennedy High School. It was a problem when I was over there. I remember my teacher, Mrs. Pond, she used to keep a bottle of brandy or something up in her drawer. And Mrs. Rossi was the best teacher I had. And I still remember them. And there were teachers that I also didn't like, that, that really pushed at my self-esteem. But guess what? Over that now, understanding that there are no limitations anyone can put on you except for the limitations you choose to put on yourself. And we're making a choice not to address the issue of the failed public services in Sacramento and in Las Vegas and across the nation. We have elected Black officials. They represent the office of the elected position that they are in. And all of the representatives represent you. But you first have to figure out, how will you stand up to hold the system accountable, and how will you work with other people? Because there's so many people in little silos that they give little tiny bits of money and let you fight over it. It's almost like a joke, because everybody has to have some of those outcomes, and everybody's scrambling for the outcomes for the data, because the data is critical to sustain why you're relevant. And the bulk of the money goes to big nonprofit organizations who are getting the data from one or two Black folks. Look, it's about contracting now. It's not about the benefit for all people. It's about how the contracted services are out there and how people access contracts. Life It's not easy. The system has changed. I remember when Ferguson happened and people were out there and they had all those heavy equipment and, it was like race riots. It was crazy. And their city council was meeting, busy meeting because they knew that things were going to change. So they were giving out contracts for 15 years. How do they align federal and state contracts for 15 or more years? They would be long off of the council. But that's what people fear when they start to lose control. That's what's happening in this country right now. People are trying to shift and get rid of local control issues. So now this president just signed a bill. He's going to dump all the money into the general fund. And the flexibility of utilizing those funds comes from the principal. Where's your protections? How are we going to, if we don't talk about it now, when special ed money and gifted and gate and Title I and neglected and delinquent and all of those monies are going to drop into the general pot. And there's no accountability right now. Your child can be in public school for 12 years or more and still come out an idiot. And that's real. Not know nothing. They feel it's okay if they taught him how to put his jacket on. That's a goal. It's a goal if they taught you to hold your bladder. It's whatever they write down on that paper and you signed and agreed to. But know this, just because you signed and agreed doesn't mean that it's in stone and it's in writing. You have a personal responsibility to have your child assessed. And if it doesn't make sense to you, it ain't making sense to them. And then you have to write another letter to, the district or the supervisor of special education and have your child assessed from an outside educator, an outside assessor. That's what Umar Johnson does. He's a psychologist. He's an outside assessor who assesses for the district. And he's right. We have a disproportionate number of Black males in special education. Has anyone ever drove over to Luther Burbank to see how many Black men, young men, are in the special ed program over there during the summer? Or you guys you drive by there all the time. It's not sports that's happening over there. It's special ed. And it's dittos. And my son, Tyler had a disability, but guess what? He did not do any summer program in the district, ever. One time he was in special ed, and I let him do the summer program. And some kid took his glasses and threw them out the window on the bus, and the district never reimbursed me for those glasses that got thrown off the bus. And then he was getting bit every day. And then there was another issue. Goodness, those little dittos that they were giving him. I didn't send him to school to get no dittos. That's what happens in the classroom right now. But guess what? If your child can't do the work every day and there's no homework and they're getting F's, and even if they ain't getting F's, somebody needs to tell me. If they're getting the assessment and it shows that your child's below grade level, where are they at? And then someone needs to know how to read those little star exams, the little assessments, that the district gives to all the children in certain grade levels. You need to be able to see where your child's scoring. Because if he's at the 3rd and the 5th grade level and he's in the high school, there is an issue there. It ain't happening. He ain't going to graduate and go to college. He ain't going to graduate and get a job. It's all going to be based on his behavior, skills, and that's when it comes into the parenting part. How well did you raise your child? How disciplined is your child? Are they out there having a good time? Are they disciplined enough to understand that their behavior can have consequences, serious consequences, and do they know how to act? That's what we're talking about here. But I'm talking about more than this, because I'm talking about the data that I see in Sac City and the data that I've found here in Nevada. And what I see online, because it's all public information, means that public system has failed African American children. And I asked myself why. And I said, well, hell, we're participating. We have elected officials, and then we have people in nonprofit organizations. But then I understand that the people who are recognized sometimes to get the work don't have the level of skills that I have. I didn't see them anywhere in my journey of the 30 years that I have been engaged in the public process. They ain't been in the same rooms that I have been in. So how can they explain my journey? They can't. Cannot, simply. And I don't have time to educate individually any one person. And I say pimping ain't easy, but goddamn, somebody's doing it very well when it comes to the lack of engagement for the Black community. Because we're in silos. We're trying to reach our people. We don't have a way to reach them. Sure, they use this, but then hey, people ain't got time to sit up and watch you. They don't have to watch me. Somebody needs to know that the data that I'm talking about is some real shit. And because the district has a partnership with the juvenile hall, that they just come and get the kids when they've committed a crime supposedly at the school site. And then they put the kid in juvenile hall, but they're still not finished investigating the supposed crime. And then all of a sudden, more and more charges come on the kid. And the kid's at home with an ankle monitor, can't go nowhere. Because he ain't stupid. His mama ain't stupid. She's not trying to let go of her son. We fought so hard. We fought, and we got 3 different changes in his disability. First, it was non-specific, and then it went to intellectually disabled, and then it went to autistic. And all these different changes of the diagnosis of the disability changed with no services attached. And all the time we're supposed to have speech and language development, but when you can talk to this kid, he don't make sense. So, it really is an issue that he has a language disability, a language impairment. And then for people to talk to him and then try to get a statement and not get a clear answer. I don't know what they expected to get, because he is language, but the people that he was involved with, language impaired, have a disability. So all of a sudden we have the 2 conversations about something that happened with some children who can't communicate with each other. And they want to put one of them in jail. You know why? Because you get a check. And they get to get that check if they put him in jail. But what's worse than anything at all is that when I was going in, my son got disability too, to understand that they were young Black men who were getting a Social Security check, but when they turned 18, the check cut off. And there was no one there to advocate to ensure that the check continued. And no matter how much they came, they tried to communicate effectively. The only thing that happened for them is they were arrested and taken to jail. And that's the system. That's the game. And we have let this happen because it's happened all around us. And we're not talking about it. We're not talking about the failure. We're not talking about, what are we talking? Oh, shoot. Bill Cosby, R. Kelly, Cuba Gooding Jr. What did he did something? We're talking about behaviors of humans who had a choice in the behaviors that they chose to engage in. And no matter what, a whole lot of people were involved. And it was good while it was happening. But all of a sudden, somebody wants to retell the story and get paid. Oh, but they already got paid, but they want more getting paid. And then all of a sudden, here we are in what is it? Everybody's trying to get people on board. Me too, me too. Look at me, look at me. Sign on to my Instagram, sign on, No, we're destroying lives out here. Whatever happened with Bill Cosby, really, hey, it's real. And as long as he was on television, we never heard a negative thing. And if it was going on, hell, it was just going on, but we never heard it. So Why is it that our children don't get to see the same fake fantasy that we had to live up to, thinking that we could have a life like Bill Cosby? But guess what? We really do now. We live in our own boxes. We have our own family structures, and we're enjoying our lives. It's just that the social structure doesn't sustain our social life unless we're actually socializing with our families. And that's a good thing that we have good families and strong families, because then we can really enjoy life. There is so much that I could share, but there is an urgency that the conversation switch to whatever it been on, to how are we going to stand up in this 2020 election and select a candidate that's willing to support us and our values. And the most critical thing is that you start looking at people who have tried to adhere to the rules. That's what you need to know. You need to pick a candidate that is going to adhere to the rules, because I don't want the rules to change. I like the fact that I have the opportunity to get on the computer and talk. I like the fact that I can do the outreach. I like the fact that I can use the skills that I do have. And my voice doesn't have anything to do with my physical capacity to communicate effectively with any one person. That's what I like the fact of. I like the fact that I understand how to utilize these tools to do outreach, to try to build capacity amongst individuals who have the same and may share the same concerns as I do. My concern is truly around access to the public services and understanding if our children don't start reading by grade 3. And see here, Tyrone Thompson, he passed away, and he was working in the legislature to try to ensure that African American children would access reading skills by grade level 3, because that's what it is. They're counting the prison beds. And then he passed away. But they passed the bill. But guess what? They have no working tools that have been aligned. They have that Senate bill, AB. It's called AB. I want you guys to look it up. Go online and find it. AB 469 in Nevada. And then understand that the whole time they talking about changing the weighted formula for the students, they only talked about an assembly bill. Assembly bill. I think it's 543. AB, no, Senate Bill 543, yeah. And that just talks about the weighted formula and how kind of like all kids are generating the same funding mechanism or same weighted money. And it doesn't talk about Title One. I've been trying to figure out what happens around Title One here and how the youngest and the neediest child are being given services. But then they're trying to figure out a definition of at risk. Can somebody tell me what the definition of at risk is? Somehow, neglected and delinquent and at risk need to be redefined in Nevada. Okay. It's only going to be redefined if we allow it to be redefined. And that's real. It's time for more voices to stand up for the children who may look like you. It really is past time. It's time that we have a public conversation, because we can't seem to be in the same room together and have this conversation because other people want to lead the conversation to as where it may not be real. It is a reality that we need to understand that we are the ones that are personally responsible for the outcomes in public education if we choose not to show up. We choose not to vote. We choose not to allow our voices to be heard. But guess what? You will. You will pay taxes. Someone will make a determination as to what services you will be entitled to if you have a need. And they'll decide how those needs will be met. And your voice won't have anything to do with it, simply because there's no whole lot of people who look like you. They're stepping up to the conversation and have that conversation at the table. It's time for us to come to the table. Simply enough people have died. I can't keep on going over past history. We know that there were sacrifices of people who chose to stand up. Somebody needs to check themselves and understand what Nipsey was out there doing. Because I never heard of Nipsey until, hey, Old Town Road came up, and he did say we need to talk about a lawsuit. We need to talk about how we're going to have a voice and engaging and demanding basic access to basic services that people are paying themselves to ensure that they have access and quality lives for themselves. But somehow, when it comes to the ability of us to ensure that we are the ones that have a voice and ensuring that whatever's being given or offered to our people in our community is sustainable and actually benefits someone, and then we have no conversation, we just accept failure. You just give someone the letter grade of F, and they're just supposed to roll with it, right? Mm-mm. You roll with whatever you know you're entitled to. I'm rolling with what I know that I'm entitled to and what I understand what my children got. And, for people to tell me, oh, well, just because it happened for you doesn't mean it can happen for anybody else. No, it works. The system does work. They do have a requirement to provide that service, and you have a right to measure that benefit. But if you ain't measuring the benefit, I don't know what's happening here. It's a choice. It's your personal choice to educate yourself. Everything you may need in life is online. All the laws and the rules are written. The conversation, there isn't, Malcolm said it. There is no more laws that you have to put on the book to protect your civil rights as a citizen. Citizens have rights. We have rights. No one can sit up here and change legally what happens to you. It's just real. Here we are, and it's 2020. We're living in trying times. We're living in a time where people's behaviors are unacceptable, and we've allowed that misbehavior to be interpreted as something that's basically acceptable, and it's just not acceptable. So what we choose to do, and what we have to choose to do, is to all get in the room, and we need to all show up, because showing up is 100% of the game. Then once you get there, you have to figure out what it is that you're concerned about. What concerns you in this current climate? I want to be living tomorrow, actually. I like life. And, none of us know when it's going to be our time. We just don't know. It could go tomorrow. It could go right now. But if you're not living your life to your fullest extent, because God gave you the grace and knowledge of the journey, if you were willing to do the walk, then I know that you learn from the journey, because it's trials and tribulations, because it's written that until you accept your journey, you'll keep on facing those same trials and will still affect or prohibit you from moving forward. So, you got to pass go and you got to get those $200. It's the game of life, the game of Monopoly. We are living in a real game. We've allowed our children to be a part of that game, like whatever, where they go out and they chase people in the cars or whatever, and it's like a police game. It's like, at 5 o'clock, all the squad cars leave the station down in Sacramento, whatever, and they go into the neighborhoods and they start chasing down people after midnight, because, you shouldn't be on the streets at midnight. And then, they will just catch you, or they will just kill you, because we know with the Clark incident, they just killed that boy because he suspected vandalism, where people had car insurance, but his life was taken because of suspected vandalism. Sure, it was a suspected issue, but is that all your life is really worth? Vandalism? When people have car, that's why we pay insurance. My car got broken into when I was living in the South area. I don't think I was out there trying to shoot nobody, and I don't think I called the police to have them come shoot nobody either. And why would that even happen? Someone please tell me. And why wasn't the family even notified? They're knocking on the door and saying, we'd like to have you. And then someone could explain, well, what might have been in their backyard was a family member. None of these things happen anymore. It's just an assumption as to how Black people live. And it's assumed because so many black people don't have basic education, not basic services. And jobs are hard. And even if you have the best education, it's who's going to give you a job? Who's going to employ you when they can employ their son? Who is going to give you a contract? Please help me, someone. But they will hire one person. An organization will hire one black person who has great skills to get out there and get that data so that they can sustain their livelihood. This is our fault, people. We're the ones. We're the ones that are not engaged in the process. We're the ones that chose not to step up. It's past time. It's past time that we do the things that we have to do. And reality is that it is us. It is only us that can do anything differently. And that's real. So I don't know. I keep trying to get out here and engage the community so that we understand our personal responsibility to sustain life and to create a better future for our children. And that is our personal responsibility. And each one is so uniquely gifted because of the journey that they chose in life. And God prepared each one of us as a gifted and blessed individual. And we are strong. But we have to first believe that we're strong. We have to first believe that our children are entitled and deserving. And we have to first believe and take a responsibility to ensure that our kids don't go to school all day long and then come back and say that they don't have no homework if they don't have to do anything. And that they go back year after year and they don't know how to write their name. We all have a personal responsibility to ensure that public services are sustained. We're paying taxes for state, county, government, federal government. We're paying taxes for America. And then here we are talking about Democrats and Republicans. It doesn't matter what you are. You have to believe in someone who's willing to fight for you. Someone who's willing to stand up and say, I believe that we are all we're all deserving of having a quality family life, and that America should be a better nation than ever, and that we should have the opportunity to live lives like, not that we're so rich, but a quality life, one where you can give your child a great experience and that they can feel loved and safe, and that they're not out there struggling because they're cold and they don't have a blanket, or they don't have dinner, or they don't have a place to cover their head. Someone needs to help me with how we turn our backs on the homeless population every day. But we all know we don't have enough room in our homes, that we're paying taxes. We would hope that those taxes would sustain a quality process that would enable a person to transition from homelessness. There are so many people that may, go through a crisis in life, and none of us are prevented from going through a crisis in life. And then once you are in crisis, then your choices are not weighted based on what's more beneficial to you. But the system that you depend on has to be one that's functional. And that's where we all come in as citizens in America. That's when public citizenship is really vital, is that we start understanding that we have to love one another, and that we have to love Americans, and we have to love this life that we've been able to achieve to this point. I'm 61. Do you think I want to give up this opportunity to empower others and show other people the way that they can be self-empowered, and that they don't have to depend on someone opening the door for them, that they could choose to step through that door themselves? But it's a choice in life. And perhaps it's a fearful choice. Perhaps it was one that I was pushed away from taking for a long time. But then when I understood the unempowerment of not knowing as a community our personal responsibility in having a conversation about the public services and how it affects all of us locally. And in a public school, where's the community that looks like Black people that's talking about the issues? And even if we've managed to get a Black Parallel School Board, I remember them saying that that was an organization that they didn't have to listen to, and therefore disempowering the organization with the committee, with the community. And so the Black Parallel School Board barely, they have to work to try to get people out to understand just what's happening. And why don't we do it for ourselves? Independently, you can't do what you don't know you need to do. And if you just put your child in public school and just assumed that something will happen, something does happen right away. If your child can access those basic resources that they're being offered, they start writing. And a lot of these children have dossiers on them that are over 150 pages. Go to the school and ask to see your child's discipline record, because there's everything in there. And when you leave the public, I want somebody to go on my videos and look. There was a district attorney, and she said, yes, those records are sent over from the public school to the juvenile court. And they have access to all those behavior records. Now, they may not have access to your disabilities, because that's not what they're concerned about. They're not concerned about creating support for you while you're in the juvenile hall. But that behavior record helps them sustain and provide evidence that you are totally dysfunctional and you need to be locked up. And and I had seen an article that was in Philadelphia, and when they were trying to weigh on giving people extra time in jail if their juvenile record showed a history of misbehaviors. And I'm saying, wow, this is what our country has come to. Truly a prison nation. But we've allowed that to happen as citizens who are inactive, people who work every day and say that they got a life and a wife and a career, and they have time to get in the weeds of what's really not happening. But as you grow and as you get to a point in life where you start understanding that if we choose not to stand up, that we choose to lose everything, and we've gone too far to turn back now. So I think I've been on this computer way too long tonight, but I did want to talk about it because we need to start talking about it, and we need to find organizations that we can join and that we can start participating and speaking out and sharing concerns of failed services. Because if you're not talking about it, it's just something that's happening to you. But as you start to get out there and start looking and researching the data and start understanding this, not just you anymore. There are a lot of people that don't know how to get through this process and have to continue to fight. You have to fight for everything you get in America. You have to fight even though you have rights. Ask me this question, and I would tell you I don't understand why. Why is it that a student can be enrolled in the public school system and get year after year letter grades of F, and you can do nothing to support that child? And then if you want to do something about it, why do you have to get an attorney and try to go to court to ensure that you can access basic rights? That's the job of the public school system. Why do you have to go to court? Why do I have to try to organize and galvanize people? Because I did the petition, but I only got like 8 people who signed the petition. But I wanted to get a petition and try to get people to sign and stand up saying that this is just totally unacceptable, totally dysfunctional. But then I only got 8 people. And I thought I'd put all the information that I was able to find over time. Why aren't we measuring the maintenance of effort of Brown versus the Board of Education? Why isn't that happening by itself? You know why? Because Prop 209 happened in California. And Prop 209 says they don't have to do the comparison of the failure between different ethnic groups. And so, if African Americans ain't get it and ain't getting it, well, kind of like they ain't getting it. All right, well, are they complaining? Hell no. Well, what we going to do? Doing what we're doing. That's kind of how it works. If you don't show up, you get nothing. So as I showed up for my kids, all my kids benefited. But there were so many other children that could have benefited, if their parents understood that they had a right. And then once they do start understanding, it's most likely too late. What do you do for an 8th grader who's reading at 3rd grade level? Somebody tell me. We're not asking for the basic assessment data to determine how many eighth grade kids are in the eighth grade that are at third grade level. And if they're at third grade level, what is the plan truly to ensure that they get to the next grade level? And is there a plan? And did anybody ever even talk about that? That's what we're not talking about. That's what I have the hardest problem with. I have the hardest problem with understanding that in the eighth grade, if you have a student who cannot do eighth grade level work, that means they cannot access the curriculum. And when the district has been allowed by the state of California to Z code the curriculum, which means lowering it to a standard in which a student has the ability to access it, they stay at third grade level for the whole time. And they're not required to really, they're not required because they're only getting a certificate of completion. And because they get a certificate of completion, the district was able to raise their graduation rates. But, let me tell you this. What I found out, that a student can be arrested in high school and the district doesn't have to report it as an expulsion, because kind of like the student got arrested, and even if they're still investigating the crime, the student has to go to juvenile until they finish investigating the crime, and the student's still going to juvenile once the kid's in juvenile. But I think the student I was working with, I had worked with him for the last 4 years, and I could really document that nothing really happened. But I was really trying to understand how come we didn't have a manifestation hearing before he was arrested, when the incident supposedly took place in September. Then all of a sudden, 2 days before his birthday, on December the 10th, they just came and arrested him, took him to jail, and told the mother that she wouldn't be able to get him out until he was 19. I was just trying to understand, why do we even have federal laws that don't protect children? And then we have to go get an attorney who has to be willing to take a case for a Black child who they feel is ignorant and cannot really articulate, and really he could not articulate his intent behind the whole miscommunication of the event that took place, because he has a language disability and he can't really talk. So he really can't explain anything. So it's like, you ask the question, it's like, well, you want me to say this? No, I don't want you to say anything. I just want to know what happened. But you can't explain to a child who doesn't know how to articulate a scenario and how that affects them. It's real. When they have the ability as a public school to send over your entire life's behavior records from kindergarten or third grade, and they've been collecting everybody in the world to put something in your behavior records, and it follow you to court, what do you think this world is going? Where do you think the harvest is? Bing, bing, bing. Human capital. That's what human capital is. So it's time that we start understanding truly where we are in life, and how much we've lost, because we've lost really most of our personal freedoms. But this is the election that's going to make a difference. This is the election that has to have someone willing to lay down the law, and we have to abide by the American law, not what someone else wants it to be, and not what someone else can just come in there and just hey, like Western days. It's not the Western days. We fought all those battles, and I don't think we should have to fight them again. If we've won the ground, why do we have to refight for ground we've already won? We need to demand that what's on the books is provided. And we need to demand that we have access to basic services, and that our our children are not at the bottom of the barrel, that they're making adequate yearly progress, and that we have a right to have our concerns about the people who are being paid to work for our people. That's what I really want to know. Who are they? And are we ensuring that the benefit actually happened? Because right now, I can't say that's happening. Not when here in Clark County, I've been expected to accept that there's a 259% suspension and expulsion rate, higher than any other ethnic group, it's as if Black people are just have leprosy or something. Just totally dysfunctional. Can't manage to be functional. That's some dysfunctional stuff going on. And so because it is so dysfunctional, I'm going to keep talking about it. Probably going to come back in a couple of days after I've thought about some things and share some more knowledge because that's what we have to do. We have to drop knowledge. There are ways to we can ensure that the benefit happens, but we have to show up. It's important how we show up, and it's important that we're talking about all the great things that should be happening for children and how we're measuring the good things. And we don't want to talk about what you believe is negative, because if you believe it's negative, then you need to tell me a better way to ensure that I get a positive outcome. Because that's what the federal government aligns for children, to have positive outcomes, measurable benefits to ensure that it's a great day for children, all children. And you shouldn't have to be any specific color to benefit from federal services. And understand what's happened over time is what we've allowed to happen is for magnet schools to serve people with money. And that was the mandatory integration that happened around beyond, right around Brown versus Board of Education. And then we've allowed them to create these specialty programs that we do open enrollment on. And somehow open enrollment doesn't ever affect you as an individual because you can't seem to get in those programs. Well, those are programs for people with money and people with knowledge, knowing how to get into those programs. That's what it's for. It's supposed to be about the lottery, and and here in Clark County, they were talking about a lottery with the weighted formula. I was trying to understand what were we really going with that? Because the weighted formula had a huge chunk of money in it, and all the other money was just little money, And then just trying to figure out I'm just trying to figure out how they hold themselves accountable to even getting any of that money, any of the federal dollars, because they're not making progress for the targeted people. They're not making progress. So, if you don't have the data for the youngest and the neediest Title I child, and then you have a 256%, rate of behavioral infractions, and you have this AB 469 that talks about equity and access. And for some reason, you can't talk about how equity is happening. And that's where we're stuck, because this is still America. And we're still stuck about talking about access to all children, having equitable access. And that's where the conversation needs to go today. I don't want to talk no more about R. Kelly and Bill Cosby. Bill Cosby shouldn't be in jail. Over $1 million. Somebody got $1 million and then decided that wasn't something that she was participating in. When people get paid, it's a whole different thing, because it's a choice. Choice is everything. People make choices in life. We need to understand that and stay out of choices and understand that we need to operate, because mandated services, what we've decided would be the law and how the laws would operate to create access to all people. We need to ensure that those things don't get rolled back. So I'm signing off for tonight. It's been a great talk. It's been too long. I've been on a line 1 hour and 32 minutes and 56 seconds. Too long. And thanks for everybody who dropped in. Maybe I can figure out how to let other people talk in the room, or people can say something. And it's just not me ranting, because I'm going to rant. Because simply it's time to rant. People need to understand that this is a time of crisis. Anytime you find out that a local district has made a partnership with the county to arrest children, and their school resource officers are the ones who are providing that little intervention, and there is no requirements for special education to do an intervention or a support for 2 special education students. And it was not a physical altercation. There was no physical altercation. There was nothing. There was a miscommunication, as far as I'm trying to understand what was said by the report that was read. And then the officer keeps going back trying to get additional comments. People just remembering things differently. How dishonest is this? I've seen them work a case. I've seen them work more than one case in which a person with disabilities was put in jail because someone without a disability took an advantage of them. And that's just real. You can't befriend someone who's taking advantage of you. And I see how this system works. They build cases. But how does that work when you're in special ed and you're supposed to be getting this service, and it should be creating you the access to not have to depend on making bad choices, and then you don't get no service? And what is this? I'm trying to understand the system that we're living under, because truly it's impacting our people as a race. Because get this, I know Brown versus the Board of Education happened, and I know that this has been going on for what, 55 years or so, and we've been, what, the Emancipation Proclamation did happen, and we've lost so many Black leaders. I know we've lost them, but it doesn't take away from our personal responsibility to figure out how we go to have a conversation about what we're mandated to participate in a process and which sustains the community. And then we have no access to change what's happening relevant for people who look like us. If I have a grandchild, I want my grandchild to be educated well. I want them to have an opportunity to have a quality life and benefit in life. It can't all be about them failing to write their name on the paper and somehow never getting to that point where they didn't follow the process. And somehow by the time they're in the 5th grade, they got nothing because they weren't required to do the missions project. My older boys were not required to do the missions project. I didn't know anything about a missions project until I got over there at over there at that school where my son was going to school. I can't even think about it right now. It's funny. But Mark Twain Elementary School. And then we had to do the missions project. And it was all about the California missions. And we had to pick a mission. We had to actually build the mission. And I had to help my son because I didn't know, I had never been required to do that or participate in it. And then when he got into high school, he did the high school graduation project, the senior project. But my older boys didn't have to do a senior project. It just makes a difference where you are and where you're accessing your resources and what you have access to. Everything in life is about teaching yourself that you have to push yourself to be the best that you can be. Because that's what my mother said, be the best that you can be. And that's what I told my sons, be the best that you can be. You do your best job. Learn what it is you can learn. Because everything out here is public information. And you can access it. But they can limit your access. Because they can put restrictions on you. But you didn't know that. There are so many things that can happen over this internet. We really need to be aware of cloud computing. It's our personal responsibility to know because you're responsible for what you don't know. And I jump subjects so many times because so much has happened in my brain. But when they were documenting that we were downloading movies, they had to start disabling devices. And guess what I said? If I can't pay the bill from my device, you won't get paid. And I meant that. So whatever they did to my laptop to disable it from accessing the internet, they fixed it so they could get their payday. Because honestly, that's what it's about. They're not going to take your device offline if they can't get their money. That's real. Life, it's real. The consequences to inaction is failure. And that's why I'm coming on the internet. I'm on the internet because the consequences to inaction is failure. We've lost enough. It is time for all of us to understand that no matter what your voice is, no matter how someone may think that you're ignorant, no matter what people think about who you are, understand that it's just time for you to stand up. Everybody has a vote. And this time, some felons will be able to vote. When you got a clear record, get out there and vote. Let your voice be heard. You never were heard before. Do something different. Encourage people to get out there and do something different. We've lost enough. This is 2020. And think about, Think about what we've lost over time. Think about who's not here to share the message. Think about all the artists that we still hear, that people still want to make that money, but how they were so criminally, persecuted to control. Oh, Mayor Kevin Johnson, great mayor, got the Arco Arena that was it was confrontational, for a while. Some people wanted it so bad and other people didn't. But they controlled him because they thought they had a little something that was a blurb. But guess what? That never really made a difference because he was still able to do what he was able to do when he got that stadium built. And he was able to work with the Black group of people trying to build capacity. It was just unfortunate that somehow we're always in the barrel, climbing over each other's backs, trying to be recognized. There's no recognition. I mean, you either do it or you don't do it. But if we don't choose to stand up right now, there won't be a time that we can turn back the clocks, the hands of time. We won't be turning back the hands of time because simply we've lost too much. We have really never created a pathway in which to engage in the oversight process of public services that most affect our people. Yet and still, there is targeted money allocated to provide services for people in our communities who look like us. Monies that are aligned to ensure that all kids have access, and then they call it something like poverty money or other kind of money, neglected and delinquent, and FRL, free and reduced lunch money, because your parents don't make enough money. There's money available out there that is support for people who look or who may be caught up in poverty, who are most affected by issues of poverty, who are most affected by the last ones in the game, who are most affected by Brown versus the Board of Education and integration of all services when they really didn't want to share with you. But it really didn't. I don't care if they don't want to share. It's your personal responsibility to say, hey, something is not right. Failure is not an option. You're giving my kid an F and it's unacceptable. So you write a letter. You write a letter to the principal. You write a letter to the superintendent. You write a letter to the teacher credentialing board, and you notify people that it's unacceptable that your child would be enrolled in the public school system with the letter grade of F, and that you're making no progress towards age appropriate growth and development for an individual by their age, measuring something that's beneficial. And yet and still, here we are as a people. And my people cannot talk about where it is that they're talking about. Failed public services don't exist. Concerns me because there won't be any programs left after what's getting ready to happen with the president signing the bill, changing education forever. He didn't get rid of the restrictions, no. But no one's following the rules. So if we're not benefiting now, they put more money in the pot. What makes you think we're going to benefit because there's more money? No, they're going to pay themselves more money, and we're still not going to have any services because if you don't show up, no one can hold you accountable. And if no one's complaining, well, what is the problem? I remember when I filed a complaint and with the Justice Reform Coalition. And we did say that it was social promotion, it was rampant, and far too many kids were being placed in special education. We listed a whole bunch of issues as to why we felt there was inequity in the system. And they said, first they said, why is it just you? Why is you the only person? First, when I did it by myself, then I got with the coalition, and then I filed a complaint, and then they told the district to work with us, is basically what they said. So the district met with us one time, and then kind of like we didn't meet anymore. It was kind of like over. There was no legal, threat of a lawsuit. Just because we won the complaint didn't mean, just because you win doesn't mean that, if you're not going to sue, you're not going to go get an attorney, nothing's going to change. Lawsuits seem to, when it affects somebody, but these are still the public tax dollars. Why do we have to engage in lawyers and judges to ensure that people follow basic rules? The rules are written for all of us. But why do we have to use judges and lawyers to apply or abide by the rules? That's what I want to know. Why are my rights so violated that we have to find a lawyer to represent my rights that are written in law? That's what it's, the system is just not held to account because not enough of us speak up. Too many people don't do public policy. What is public policy? You pay taxes. Public policy is about the tax money and local control. What is local control? Well, you elected someone. If they're not representing you, then you elect someone else. And that's how it works. And so we're just talking about the public process and the criticalness of understanding that every day when somebody's giving their bestie a contract with the money that you pay for taxes, that's the way it goes because they stepped up and they're participating. It's all about this. So if we don't demand that they are overseeing the process and it's affecting us all equally, then we're allowing it to happen. And it's time for a change. So this is why, things have changed. We do have access to build capacity in other manners, in other ways. I'm doing my little outreach tonight, and I probably, try and get on at least once. This one I did on my Zoom. I did sign on to Zoom, and I put the meeting information on the wall. And if people would have called in on that, I don't know how it works yet, but I think my sister did, and she was on the picture for a minute there. And we could talk and she could talk too and we could record it. But this way I'm just recording on my Zoom and I'm recording on Facebook Live and I could see the little pictures and I'm trying to focus on talking directly to the people that need to understand that this is America. You were born here, you didn't ask to be born. Our children didn't ask to be here. We didn't ask to be here. We are Americans, we were born, and we're Black Americans. And as being born in Black America, as far as I'm concerned, still an American. Citizenship is everything, but it's nothing when you choose not to exercise your personal responsibility to ensure that, hey, if you pay taxes and you pay some taxes, you're going to pay some property taxes, you're going to pay some car taxes, you're going to pay taxes. We're going to pay them. Then we need to ensure that if they're supposed to be providing service, that the service is actually working, that pimping ain't happening. Because otherwise, it's just a pimp game. And we're still living on the plantation. The harvest is us. Because we're the ones that are not showing up to ensure that we actually benefit from the public service. So, hey, it's a little teaching experience. I got taught, I got to learn. There's nothing wrong with other people learning that, this is the way it is. And no matter how offended you are about accepting that our children are not learning, are not reading, they have behavioral issues, and yes, they are real. They are real because someone pushed them forward without them being ready. And we didn't ensure that they had a true pathway forward. And everybody who's my age has a personal responsibility to know that it is our responsibility to ensure that this happens, that accessibility happens. This is what we fought for. And then we just turn our backs as if it's not critical, as if it's not important. We need to show up when they have board meetings. We need to show up when they have school site council meetings. We need to know that these meetings are public and they're supposed to post them on the door and they're supposed to provide the information to you when you ask for it. The real deal is they don't give you nothing when you ask, because guess what? If you're not going to file a complaint and force them to, and we're not going to go get an attorney, I guess it ain't going to happen. That's what I guess. So, right now we're in a critical time because the Black Parallel School Board actually has a lawsuit in which they're negotiating advocacy for our people. Our people need to learn that they have to show up. We have a lot of Black professionals, a lot of Black entertainers, a lot of Black wealthy people who don't do anything about demanding accountability for the public services of the public school system, and then they want to complain about what they see. Don't complain if you're not willing to look at the system and demand that we have basic accountability for the services and the system that we're forced to live under. And compliance is not the issue. Our children should not be killed for failing to comply with a rule. That's what we're talking about. Because someone told you to do something. That happened in our lifetime. I'm so happy I wasn't living then, but it's still happening. What would happen to a slave if they failed to comply? Everyone knows. What would happen to a slave if they chose to run? We all know. If you don't know, all you have to do is watch the public TV every February. They let you know that runaway slaves could be killed, runaway slaves could be murdered, and what would happen to slaves during, if you never knew what slavery was about, I can tell you, when we moved back here in the 70s, coming from overseas, it was an amazing eye-opener that I got to learn all about slavery every February. It was a reassuring thing. We'd have to watch, and then when Kunta Kinte came out, oh, come on now. And then The Color Purple. All these little education tools is they want you to know what the expectation of behavior used to be. But we're citizens just like every other people in America. And we need to critique and oversee and have a conversation with someone who's determining how the benefits are benefiting us as a people, because they're not. They're just not. And I don't know how to say it any other way, but they're not. And I'm not going to criticize and talk about people who are trying to do something, because there are people out there. Yvette Carnell, I listen to Boyce Watkins, I listen to some people. I used to listen and love Dick Gregory because he was the realest one out there. But it really doesn't matter. The other people are trying to do something and waking some people up and allowing people to think about their journey in life and how they can be self-empowered to help participate in where we all have to go with this. We all have to go with ensuring that access really is real, and that we're starting to look at what's happening with the mental health professionals and children in mental health when people are being abused every day and expected to function as if the abuse is not happening. Don't know how you go to school every day and get a letter grade of F, and then you're supposed to come to school and be happy because you're not successful. Someone needs to help me with this. I'm trying to think about how I should think about failure as an option, and someone needs to be happy about it. Because I'm not. I'm not happy about what's going on. I'm not happy that I know how to get online, and I know how to look at the State Department data, and I know how to look and get any kind of, it's out there. It's out there for everyone. We all need to understand that we can all look at the data if we want to look at the data. But we also know that when we look at the juvenile halls, when we look at the prisons, who's in there? And we need to know that, they're not planning on putting people in. When they say that America's is a prison nation, and they say that we are the highest incarcerated people, and then that it used to be, few and far apart that you would know someone whose child was either murdered or incarcerated. But now you just have to look, and not too far, someone that you know is going to have a child that has been either murdered or incarcerated. It's just past time. The box can only protect you so much. You're living in your little box. I don't care how big it is, how much you've managed to get while you've been living in your journey and during your lifetime. But none of that you take with you. The only thing you leave behind is actually what you've committed yourself to doing and engaging in. And, if God gave you a gift and you were able to share it, then you left that gift behind. That's how you grow. That's what your tithes are. Your tithes are, what are the gifts that God gave you that you were able to share with someone else and they were able to share with someone else. And right now, I don't see a lot of people giving. I see people thinking they're gonna buy their way to heaven. It ain't happening. It ain't happening. And I don't see nothing going into the joke is, you don't see no hearse or no Rolls Royces or no, nobody, moving back to the funeral or where you get buried. It's not gonna happen. So here we are. And I thought about, really just going online at the end of the year. And I've been pushing not to go online, but I've done videos in the past talking about the poverty pimps. And it really, really kind of pissed me off when Roger Dixon did the bill about the light rail. And then our kids start getting tickets to be on the light rail, tickets that would criminalize them. And then we didn't do anything about that either, but it kind of like happened because now kids could have a fine and the parents, this is a lot of money. We're not talking about a little bit of change. We're talking about harvesting on the poverty. But you pay taxes. And some of that tax money goes to ensure that kids have access to transportation to participate in certain programs. But somehow now that's just not dropping down to the local community. We don't have the summer job training program anymore, the JTPA. I mean, and if anybody is benefiting from these smaller, it's based on who you know. Who do you know that can get your kid an opportunity? So aren't we living in the land of opportunity and who you know and who have you laid up with lately to ensure that, when they were paying for children to get into colleges, the white people paying big money and they were getting into the colleges. Someone else was doing the assessment for them. So what are we really saying about this nation? We've learned more than what we ever wanted to know. And still, we're not under one roof having a conversation about what can we do to ensure that we can affect change in the year 2020. Here in Clark County, they're going to have the caucus. It'll be the first time I ever caucused in my life. I'm leaning towards a candidate. And that's just real. I'm leaning towards a candidate because I can see that looking at federal services is critical because that's how I got my right to have freedom of speech. And do I want somebody tearing apart my ability to be out here and sharing my right to freedom of speech, freedom of assembly, freedom? There was something called some lynching law where some black chick was getting accused of something because she tried to step in and stop someone from doing his duty or something, or whatever. But she went to trial for a long time. She was going to court behind that. But I don't think the community really had a good conversation about what was that really all about because it was a miscommunication in the first place. She thought she was doing something, trying to protect someone that she loved. I don't know. We watch things that happen so horrible around us every day. But, like I said, I really got out here because the children that I'm trying to support for the last 4 or 5 years in special education, I haven't been able to measure what was happening in special ed for them. And when we got grades, every time we came to the meeting, to the IEP team meeting, we didn't talk about the benefit of the services. No, we just talked about what the teacher reports were. And teacher reports just demonstrated that the student refused to do the work. So I don't know what you do when you're in the 12th grade or you're in the 10th grade or you're in the 11th grade and you can't access the curriculum because you're not at grade level. But somehow every year you just continue to get promoted. But the only credits that you got was from the African American leadership class. And that was from volunteers who were volunteering to come in and work and support African Americans. So somebody just tell me all about that. I'm trying to understand what was that all really about, 25 credits in high school or 50 credits in the 12th grade. And then, somehow you become a super senior, then you don't show up anymore, and then you just stop showing up. And they just somehow somebody come got him and put him in jail. So now he's getting the 3 squares or whatever it would have been. He got a roof over his head. Somebody's getting paid. I remember when Margaret Fortune was first going for the schools out there in Sacramento. And I'm talking too much. She was talking about trying to go out to the schools, and this white guy, he stood up in the middle. He said, well, if she gets those schools, what's going to happen to my family? What's going to happen to my retirement? How am I going to support my family? And I said, that is the issue right there. We have gone down a pathway in which dysfunction is what we're supporting as a nation. And some of these families have so many people providing support to the family, all about the dysfunctional behavior. And there's no opportunity to make progress or to move away from that. So that's where we really are. And the definition as to who should benefit and who's not benefiting. Well, 2 hours is definitely more than enough. I was able to tape the caucus event that I went to, and actually, I went to an event about the weighted funding formula and trying to get out. But a lot of I understand what I'm listening to. That's the issue, and I still think it's the lack of engaging the local community that's most affected by the conversation of failed services. And so we all need to figure out how we do, what our gifts are, try to organize those gifts around being involved and providing, services outside of your normal comfort area, and try to get out there and be involved in where we live, and know that it's important to share your voice, and know that that's the most important thing you can do. So I'm going to sign off for now, and I hope you all have a great evening. It's getting late. Good night. Have a nice evening.